We'll be aggressive in the press. We will be attack minded. You will see certain differences come Wednesday night. Barry Ferguson, MBE. Oh, Barry, Barry. Barry Ferguson. It was New Year's Day, 1986, and all was quiet up the back of the Rangers end at Parkhead. Paul McGuigan, I think it was, had given Celtic the lead in the first half and had celebrated by going onto his knees in front of the Rangers end and blessing himself quite ostentatiously. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's a symbol of deep faith for millions of people throughout the world. I feel quite insulted in their behalf that he's used that symbol as an act of aggression. An act of he's cheapened it. That was the stance I was taking on that at the time. And in the second half, Peter Grant scored. I was 16 and a half years old. I'd had my last sober New Year, I think, since Hogmanay 1985 into New Year's Day 1986. And you're 16 and a half years old. It's quite a frustrating time of life anyway. You're on the cusp of so many things that you really need quite badly. Life is quite intense and quite confusing. And that wasn't helping my mood generally. It was Jock Wallace's second spell in charge of Rangers. I hadn't known Rangers winning at Parkhead since 1980, since I was 10. And I hadn't ever seen Rangers physically winning at Parkhead in anything other than a semi-final. It was brutal. It was awful. We'd been struggling to finish third in the league for what seemed like my entire life. And as we're 2-0 down, Derek Ferguson gets subbed off. Jock Wallace subs off Derek Ferguson. And Derek Ferguson was about 2 years older than me. He still is, apparently. And that age, especially, I think you're a young guy, you like the younger players. You're always more up for the younger players. You feel like an affinity with them. And I've got a wee sister, but I don't have any brothers. And I think you get that feeling like Derek Ferguson was like my big brother. He was like my big brother. Without really, that way, Walter Smith was like a kind of auxiliary dad or a grandfather for younger Rangers supporters out there. You feel that these players and these people, that managers, what have you, that are at Rangers for a long time, they just get under your skin. They become part of the family. It is the Rangers family. Never meet them, you never meet them, but I don't anyway. I met John Gregg a few times. That was unbelievable, but he was, as I was growing up, was definitely like a kind of grandfather figure, a total superhero. At the same time, John Gregg, but you have that feeling throughout your life, that affinity with the players of a club you love. Doesn't necessarily have to be Rangers, but when Derek Ferguson gets subbed off, that was it. I'm up the back of the old say Rangers End at Parkhead, where there's about 18,000 of us packed onto that, and it didn't matter where you were standing, there was a floodlight piling right in front of you for some reason. I don't know how they worked that at Parkhead, but it was a horrible end. And I just had enough. That was it. My hero had been subbed off. That was the insult to the injury. So I think you're always, at that age, even if you don't realise it at the time, you're taking cues from older guys. So there must have been a lot of grumbling going on round about me. I probably wouldn't have done it completely on my own. I probably wouldn't have gone totally unilateral on this one. But I took off my scarf and I threw it. I threw it towards the dugout in total disgust. Now, if you know the kind of size of Parkhead, directions, the layout of Parkhead as was then, not dissimilar to what it is now. Obviously, they've just tightened up a bit. They put the stands square around the park at each end. But the idea that a scarf, which isn't the most kind of aeronautical, isn't the most aerodynamic thing in the first place, is going to get onto the trackside from the back of the old Rangers end behind the goals. That's quite farcical. I know it comes round. It comes right round to join the main stand, but I was pretty much not square on behind the goals, but I was quite close to being right up the very back of the Rangers end. The idea that scarf's even going to make it onto the trackside is a bit delusional. What I thought was going to happen, the way I threw it with such contempt, with such rage, with such passion, as I thought it was going to go floating right up there and just land at the dugout at the feet of Jock Wallace, just as Derek Ferguson walked past him, to go and sit down on the subs bench. And Jock Wallace, who obviously needed me, he obviously needed a 16-and-a-half-year-old to be telling him what his problem was, to tell him how to run a football club. He was going to get the message that he just pushed me too far, and that was the thing. What actually happened, of course, was my scarf just kind of went floppity flop, 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 down about, 20 rows at most, or 20 steps in the old terrace, and just disappeared into into a bunch of bears who, it was mobbed, it was jam packed, quite literally standing room only. And I don't, by that point I hadn't even watched because I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere like I intended to. I don't know if I shouted something, kind of yeah, something like that, and excuse me. I think I tried to maintain the pretense of being totally raging for about another maybe 5 minutes, but really, within about 10 seconds of me throwing that scarf away, I realised I made a huge mistake. That the day was done, the season was done anyway, and I just exacerbated the whole situation by chucking away the Rangers scarf that my maternal grandmother, my nana had bought me, my Catholic grandmother, albeit my maternal grandmother, my gran, it's Church of Scotland, and she was probably as much of the force behind me supporting Rangers as anybody, even though you would never know. Just kind of gently talking about Rangers to me, She it wasn't going to games and anything like that, she just knew about Rangers. That was just part of the, the deal. That was just her childhood. Rangers were just the team. But it was my maternal grandmother who had no interest in football really, and she just loved her grandkids obviously, and she'd bought me my Rangers scarf, and I thought it was unique at that point in time. I thought it was unique up until a little bit sometime last year when somebody got in touch with me on this very podcast on the comment section to tell me that they too had a red, white, and blue bar scarf with red, white, and blue tassels. I thought mine was the only one to have red, white, and blue tassels. The only kind of Rangers bar scarf with the three different colours. I'd seen plenty with all red, all white, or all blue tassels, but none with red, white, and blue tassels. You know what I'm saying? It's behind me there. Which kind of spoils the end of the story. So I was absolutely devastated. I just suddenly realised I've lost my scarf as well. That's just disrespectful. I've had that scarf since I was 9, which at that point in time, even though it was only 7 years earlier, felt like just decades, absolute decades of watching Rangers struggle to win, to even finish in the top 3 of the Scottish League setup. And at the end of the game, this meant that not only had it been a terrible day, it was absolutely awful, but I made my pals who I'd travelled up to the game with on the Stevenson Masonic Supporters Club, I made them wait about at the end to the terrace and was cleared so I could see if I could find my scarf. If it was still like in the pristine steps of Parkhead's Rangers End. No, it wasn't there. It was just fag ends and the silver foil for the pies and Bovril containers and that, and a whole lot of hopes and tears, lying in tatters. There was nothing there. There was no scarf there, and I thought, I can't believe this. This is just so we had to listen. My pals had to get taunted for extra long by the Celtic fans that were hanging about as close to the Rangers end as could possibly make it at the end, just so they could help me try and find a scarf I'd stupidly thrown away. And then we're walking into the bus park, to go back to the bus, the Stevenson Masonic bus, and I think it might be my pal Ronnie. He was like, "Hey, Alec, that guy over there?" And there was a fella, he's probably like 25 or something, but he seemed like a full-grown man to me anyway at that time. He's walking along towards his supporters' bus, and he's got a scarf on his neck, but he's also got a red, white, and blue bar scarf with red, white, and blue tassels tied around his wrist. Kind of 70s hooligan style. So I went up to him and I was like, oh, mate, excuse me, is that scarf got a black patch on it in the front, a kind of black patch with a Rangers crest stitched onto it? And he was, not for 1 second was he giving it, no, this is my scarf. I thought it was, and he was from Northern Ireland, and I'm not going to attempt to do a Northern Ireland accent. I mean, and that in itself is insulting. It's a Northern Ireland accent. Oh, is that right, Alec? No. What about a Scottish accent? Just do me a Scottish accent. Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, what... How many accents can you get in Northern Ireland? Just as many. But to me, it was just all I knew. It was a Northern Irish accent. And you know how people from Northern Ireland can be quite scary when they want to be direct with you because of that accent. And a fella just turned to me and he took his scarf and he handed it over to me, slightly pushing it into my chest. And then he went with his finger, "Don't you ever do that again." And it was met with love. It was, I felt the love. I felt the kind of paternal lesson being taught there. He's telling me, don't ever do that again. He didn't care about keeping the scarf or whatever. It was about making sure a Rangers supporter knew the meaning of the word loyal. And the following week, it went back to Ibrox and we beat Dundee 5-0. Beat Dundee 5-0. And, but the league was well over and stuff like that. We weren't going to win the league. or anything like that. It was Hearts. We thought Hearts were going to win the league that season, but Celtic pipped them at the post on the last day. But by April, Graham Souness was our manager. Walter Smith was our assistant manager. So it was a kind of it's almost like a lesson from the footballing gods, or a dude from Northern Ireland telling you don't ever turn your back on your team. But for me, it's centred around Derek Ferguson. The love I felt for Derek Ferguson, like my big brother on the park representing Rangers. I mentioned this at a pod a few days ago about one of the only moves I ever learnt on the football field was the Derek Ferguson's kind of circumvented version of the Cruyff turn. He'd be strolling in one direction across the park looking to find somebody in the wing or whatever, and then he would just change it. There's nothing there, so he'd change it that wee thing where he kind of back heels the ball through his own legs and turns in the other direction and just leaves whoever's. You see midfielders doing it all the time, but the first time I noticed it was Derek Ferguson. I noticed Derek Ferguson do it before I ever knew anything about the Cruyff turn. So I used to do that. I used to do that when I was out playing football. That was about the only move I ever had. And I just absolutely loved Derek Ferguson. And his son, Lewis Ferguson, then scores. I'm there at Hampden. Was it on the night? No, it was the North Enclosure that day. I mean, but quite the whole North Stand. And Lewis Ferguson scores the only goal of the League Cup semi-final against Steven Gerrard's Rangers. I'm absolutely devastated, gutted that day. It was a horrible, horrible day that. But there's a wee bit of you going, that's Derek Ferguson's boy that just scored that goal against his dad's club. And you know that the Fergusons are total Rangers people. And I felt a bit of kind of, pride almost for just knowing that. And when Barry Ferguson, who's about 9 years younger than me, I remember he went to Blackburn, and I was so proud of him, and I was so pleased for him, because I thought, what you do with a football, son, you need to go and show the world. And I wanted somebody for the Rangers family to go and show the world what they could do, and he did. He showed the English Premier League what he was all about. A really bad injury when he was at Blackburn, and then I think he was there for 16 months. 16 months, the same as Philip Clement. His time at Rangers, he would part for 16 months, Barry, and he started talking about wanting to come back up the road. And I think he was talking about his wife she was missing her folks and all that. And I'm thinking, they're in Hamilton, Uddingston kind of direction. Well, that's you could drive there and back in a day. It's only a few hours down the motorway. You actually get access straight to the M74. You're straight down there and back Blackburn. But that doesn't sound right. And then Barry was saying in his first presser back at Ibrox, before that League Cup semi-final against Dundee United, where he made his second debut for us, he just said he just missed the desire to win. He missed the need to win every game, and that playing in the English Premier League was just nothing compared to playing for Rangers. And it still affects me. It still affects me that I actually shamed again by a Ferguson, or by the actions involving a Ferguson. I was just like, God, he's a fucking bigger Rangers supporter than me, and I never thought I'd be able to say that about him. He's made me realise, we are the greatest club in the world, and he's wanting to come back, and things go. It just gets really intense. It got really intense with the Fergusons. Things got more complicated with Barry. But seeing him scoring as captain of Scotland, captain of my country, captain of his country, scoring against Italy, who were the World Cup holders at the time, an equaliser at Hampden on a rainy, rainy Saturday night, and a game of such intensity, such pride in that performance, and Barry Ferguson's equalising against the world champions, and not a bit out of place on that park. And we only lost that game. His Rangers teammate Alan Hutton. It still remains the worst refereeing decision I have ever seen in my life. Even the Les Mottram disallowing the Dundee United goal at Firhill because it hit the stanchion and come back out so quickly that he thought it hit the post. Even then you can understand why he did that, But this decision that we lost by which we lost the game to Italy that night was horrendous. But Barry scoring against the world champions, scoring against Celtic in the Scottish Cup final, and we'll see that free kick from now until whenever Barry's tenure as caretaker manager ends, and that's a joy in itself. Scoring in the Scottish Cup final. Scored in the League Cup final against Ayr United, a penalty, but that's him scored in the Scottish Cup final against. I mean, I was at that game. I was at the game against Ayr United, scoring the League Cup final for us, scoring Old Firm games. At Ibrox, the 5-1 game under Advocate against Martin O'Neill's side, when he scores that first goal, that wee shimmy of the hips, we just sell the wee dummy in the celebration, just loving it. And the one I've seen that quite a lot in Sky today, when he's kind of fawning his backside up at the Copeland as he puts it past Boric, kind of just spiking it with his studs. It's the strangest volley you've ever seen in your life, but so just from a craftsman who knows what to do. There's Davy Cooper, there's a winger. Brian Laudrup, a winger, attacking midfielder, whatever you want to call Brian Laudrup. Graham Souness, won European Cups and all that. He's Liverpool captain, but some towards the end of his career. They're just, I struggle to get I can't see Barry Ferguson as the greatest midfielder I have ever seen. Maybe not even in a Rangers jersey. And Gaza obviously played for us as well, but what he did in that middle of that park for us and his length of service for us over those two spells in the middle of that park, he's just one of the greatest players I've ever had the privilege of watching in my life. And I'm quite emotional about it because I'm scared. I'm scared what's going to happen to him. I'm scared what's going to happen to him as he comes back as caretaker manager. And it's bringing up a lot of old stuff. Had we fallouts with Barry? Let's start lighting this up, Alex. This is getting a bit much, but it's the Fergusons. It's the Fergusons are back, and it's a proper Rangers person and one of the greatest players I've ever seen playing for Rangers and playing for Scotland. And he's coming back as our caretaker manager, and it's one of the moments I'm really glad that you get. Phones these days, there's devices where even if you're at your work or you're going for a walk, down the park or something like that, if somebody tells you something, you can verify it straight away on your device, because a lot of people would have been falling out today if that wasn't the case. A lot of close friends would have been giving it, "You're fucking winding me up. There's no way, but are you calling me a liar? Are you calling me a liar? I'm getting sick of that. He's going to be caretaker manager. It's a decision that it's one of those. It seems simultaneously not enough and also overkill. It seems too kind of on the nose, but also too left field. It's too easy a decision, and it's too difficult a decision to appoint Barry and the backroom staff that he's bringing with him. It's too kind of funny and could be too sad, but I don't know. I just don't want it to get too real. I don't want it to get too real. There's so much been happening the last few days when on really thank you to everybody for watching these pods. I mean, I just need to get it out of my system. I just need to communicate with people about this stuff and see. It's a bit sharing, and I love the feedback I get on the pods, etc. But anyway, the whole thing with the CEO Patrick Stewart coming out last week and doing his 13-minute video on Rangers TV telling us that he was standing by the manager, and then we had the next day it was all about an American takeover, a multi-million-dollar takeover of the Teddy Bears, America's team, and then big absolute horrific rock bottom of a result against St Mirren, a total non-performance. So that's Saturday's taken up with the backlash to that. Sunday the manager gets the sack. So let's talk about Clement getting the sack, and then that's Monday, and it's happening quickly. You cannot criticise Patrick Stewart for moving too quickly or too slowly, I think. And we've got the new management team in place, but there's a trash theory. Everybody watch Trash Theory. It's a proper podcast. The guys get graphics and all that, and puts together bits of film and stuff, and his mic's completely in sync. You don't even see him; he's just narrating the videos. The Trash Theory. Talks about music, basically, all different genres of music, different bands. And there's one on the KLF. He's done it's a 36-minute pod on the KLF. I'm not recommending it. I imagine it's going to be good because I've seen a lot of the other Trash Theory stuff, but I haven't seen it yet. I keep seeing it coming up, but it keeps getting recommended to me, and I want to, excuse me. I want to watch it, but I can't get a chance. I don't mean because I'm doing these pods. I have to do these pods. This is just like, it's because watching all the other Rangers, but the proper Rangers pods, watching Sky, watching all the different stuff, just catching up with everything that's happening, talking to folk in the phone. Is Barry Ferguson been? He has. Are you winding me up? Check your phone before we fall out. It's I don't think the KLF ever did anything as esoteric or as surreal as bringing Barry Ferguson back to Rangers as caretaker manager. The KLF once famously burned £1 million. They got £1 million cash in notes, and they burned it. Just an act of art, basically. I don't know if this is going to end up having the same kind of effect, the same kind of hollowing effect. Um, Barry Ferguson is our new interim manager. That horrible journalist. He's not even a journalist, I wouldn't say. He's more a kind of hate monger. The guy Phil McGlobin, and that's terrible. I mean, if somebody else has got that name, I don't want to insult the guy's actual name. I can't pronounce it. I've never really looked into pronouncing it properly because I don't want to know anything about the fella anymore. It's already been thrown towards me in the course of seeing. Why are people talking about this stuff? Why are people saying all these horrible things? And it goes back to this guy, and he's just awful, just anti-Protestant sectarianism. And I'm not saying that kind of thing of that's the only sectarianism that counts. And I'm not trying to say anti-Protestant sectarianism is worse or more prevalent than anti-Catholic sectarianism. I'm not saying that. It's just horrible when you see it. It's sectarianism. Whatever hue, whatever angle it's going for, whatever sect it's sticking up for, whatever one it's just that. But he's doing it from a anti-Rangers, anti-Protestant kind of point of view. Some of this stuff is disgusting. It's like kind of ethnic cleansing stuff. All their children are going to be Tims and all this kind of stuff. Like, what the hell? This guy's did it. He managed to link Rangers winning the league during COVID to the vigil, the police, that sickening attack by the police on the vigil for Sarah Everard. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Right, so I'm only saying that to show that I know this is complete bunkum and it's one of those ones that's actually laughable. It got to the point this was actually laughable. But he's talking about, remember, do you remember? Nobody remembers. Nobody's as old as me. But no, Bill Struth became Rangers manager after the death of William Wilton. William Wilton drowned. He was our first ever manager as such. It was even the role wasn't the same back in those days, and he drowned in a boating accident up at Inverkip, or down at Inverkip, if you're sitting in Glasgow like I am right now. And I think it was him, or maybe it's just Celtic fans in general, kind of, at it, badass, nasty Celtic fans or whatever, just having a wee. But it was, they were trying to make out that Bill Struth had been there in the boat. Maybe he was there. That's whatever. They're trying to make it that he drowned him. No, he'd murdered William Wilton. It's absolutely pathetic because I imagine Bill Struth would have been like the caretaker manager at some point, just in the interim, and then confirmed as he was going to be manager and became he became the boss of bosses, the capital tutti capi in the history of Rangers bosses. But I think there is I've seen it. I remember my gran telling me about this. There's a picture. She did a tour at Ibrox when she was a wee lassie, and there's a framed picture, and I think it's in the back of the blue room, and it's black and white, and it's Rangers Sports Day. They have the Rangers Sports Day back in the 20s and 30s and that. And there's all these, they have a kind of reception after, it's more like a ball, became like a ball, kind of ballroom thing. And there's a picture up there of all, it must be like the 20s or the late 20s, early 30s. Struth's the manager, but she said it was a picture of Bill Struth. He was right at the front, he's right down the very front. As the caretaker manager. He's got the tux and that on. He's got the dress, the fancy evening dress on, the fancy attire on there. Because I'm very dapper. And then my uncle, he was like, "I don't want to argue with your gran. I'm not want to see your gran drying." But he was there a few years later, and he saw the same. Pictures, but it was actually Willie Thornton who was doing the front. Willie Thornton was doing. He was kind of like, he's the one that's focused on the camera. That's kind of up above. Must have been in a balcony or something, up above. And it's taking a picture of everybody. And this guy's, and it was Willie Thornton. He was kind of caretaker manager at the time. And then like my auntie was like, no, he's talking. I was in the blue room doing the tour at Ibrox, and I saw that picture. And it's Tommy McLean. Tommy McLean's, and he's got he's looking up at the camera, and he's dead centre of this picture. Like, I'm thinking, I thought it was folk in the 1920s and 30s. He goes, oh, I know what you mean. But it was Tommy McLean that was in there. I went in and I got a look at the time. I went for a tour of the Blue Room, and it was Ian Durrant. Ian Durrant was And then my wee cousin, he says he did it. It was Jimmy Nicholl. Jimmy Nicholl's at the front of this picture, and now they're telling me somebody that one of my sources that was in the other day just texted me and said, "See that picture you were always talking about in the Blue Room with the sports day in the 1920s or the 30s, and they've all got the evening wear on at the ball after." Aye, the guy right front and centre. There's only one person looking up at the camera. Aye, he says it's Barry Ferguson. He is the caretaker. He's always been the caretaker. And that's what happened. Barry was the caretaker effectively in January 2007 when we played Dunfermline in the Scottish Cup at East End Park. And that's when my intense relationship with Barry just got totally out of hand. Ian Durant was in the technical area as that's his one match as caretaker manager of Rangers, but it was Barry and Boydie probably, and our thoughts with Chris Boyd tonight. He must be thinking, why am I not getting a gig? Yeah, Ibrox just now. Barry was most definitely the caretaker manager that day on the park, and we're 3-0 down at half time to a Dunfermline team who were going to get relegated, and I don't think they'd won a home game all season in the league, and here they were 3-0 up on us. A bit like when Steven Gerrard left us, different circumstances to when Paul Le Guen left us. And we're 3-0 down to Hibs in the League Cup semi-final. We pulled it back to 3-2 that day. East End Park pulled that League Cup semi-final back to 3-1. But we were beat and we were out, and that was it. And I, as raging and as gutted as I was a bit of me thinking, aye, hell mend you, Barry. That's what you get, because I had it in my head, and this is part of the whole intense relationship with Barry Ferguson, who I've never met. I've met anybody from the Ferguson family, and yeah, this massive. The thing that happens, she's a football fan. At that point in time, I'm in my 30s. Barry, 9 years younger than me. I looked upon him as a wee brother, and to me, it was Paul Le Guen had the answers. Paul Le Guen was a continental coach, the same thing as Hervé Clement. He's got us through a group stage of European football, and with a dead rubber, we got through with a game in hand. To the next round, why would you sack a manager who's done so well for you? And he's drawn one Old Firm game and only lost one. It's not as if it's in. But he'd fallen out with Barry Ferguson, apparently, and he tried to sack Barry, and the players were sticking up for Barry. And I was at that game at Fir Park that day where we beat Motherwell. And Chris Boyd's making the sign the 6. He's making the sign of 6. So because Barry Ferguson, that was his number. And I'm like, all right, okay. I just felt as if we'd been kind of betrayed. I felt as if there's a cosmopolitan, bilingual Frenchman who'd won Ligue 1, a proper league with Lyon. He must know more about football than even a cracking player like Barry Ferguson. And here we are, we're going with the knee jerk, the kind of insular stuff. We're getting rid of Le Guen in favour of Barry and his love of the pickled onion monster munch, or was it Space Raiders? I can't remember. The Chris, and I thought this is just not the way to go. I've had enough of this. And when I was driving to Ibrox on the 13th of January 2007, when Walter Smith has taken over, does anybody else remember this? Does anybody else remember hearing this story? Because I've never heard anybody else talking about it. Maybe, because I go on the way I go on. People who know about Rangers just avoid talking to me. But I remember driving to Walter Smith coming back for his second term as Rangers manager to replace Paul Le Guen, who's been sacked. And it's safe pair of hands, Walter. And I'm driving along towards Ibrox on the 13th of January 2007. We're playing Dundee United. It's a big moment for Barry, so it's always going to be Dundee United. And Chick Young, who knows what it's like to be involved in an incident featuring Walter Smith, kind of aggressive moment in the Ibrox tunnel, was telling me, he was telling us via Radio Scotland that he'd been in, I don't know if it was in the tunnel, or it was somewhere, maybe in the main stand or whatever, the body of the main stand, and Walter Smith was having to separate Barry Ferguson and David Murray, because Murray had been saying, he says, David Murray seemed to be blaming Barry Ferguson for something, and Barry Ferguson was, and Walter, first day back in the job, he's having to split up. The chairman, who's on crutches, obviously, doesn't have any legs, for Barry Ferguson, the club captain, who's played a major part in getting rid of Paul Le Guen. The reason I probably remember that is because it suited my agenda at the time. I thought, Murray's just saying, you get rid of Le Guin. You fed him to the gallery, you fed him to the bears, if you like. The short termers, the knee jerkers, the reactionaries, when the long term plan was to turn this club around and make it, financially stable, viable. He could bring a plan, coaching, rebuilding the squad that was going to let us maintain our dominance, but just for a bit of short term pain to kind of resize the club so we wouldn't have to spend as much money. Get into EBTs and stuff like that. Or get out the EBT era, whatever it was. I don't know. That's the way I saw it anyway. And this incident that was reported by Chick Young just played right up to my bias. And when Barry scored the fifth goal that day, we beat Dundee United 5-0, going on 10, and Barry scored the fifth goal. It's the slowest I've ever been to get out my seat to cheer a Rangers goal. I've actively disliked a couple of Rangers players, Ian Black and Joey Barton, to name them. I never wanted them at the club, and I couldn't wait to get rid of them. But with Barry Ferguson, it was more like I was in love with you, and then you broke my heart, but I still kind of love you anyway. It's really strange, this relationship. This is your fat ache post all those Rangers fans who thought the cure for Rangers ills was getting in real Rangers men will now have their philosophy totally stress-tested. Reaction pod coming to you in association with Gersnet. Check out Gersnet from Sunday night. It's still up there on the Gersnet YouTube channel. It was Scott doing a fantastic job of hosting both Ben and Ross. Excellent guys, and they were giving it their best. It was a cracking pod there, breaking down everything that happened that game against St Mirren, and then what had to happen with Philip Clement, why he was sacked, and how they felt about it. I'm sponsored by Gersnet, and I'm also sponsored by independent MP Mike Amesbury, former Labour MP Mike Amesbury, former free man Mike Amesbury, now in jail for 10 weeks for not doing that thing that so many scumbag Republican MPs, Republican Congress people and what have you, and Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, all these kind of guys hiding in their gated communities behind their maximum security, talking tough about how they're going to sort people out, and well, they're just little lick spittles, geeks, spoiled little narcissists with no idea of reality, and talking trash about the left. We're all woke and we're weak and we're vegans and this kind of thing. Whereas this Mike Amesbury, he's talking Labour stuff, Labour policies, just being nicer to folk, being a bit left-wing, trying to be properly moral in his policies, but if you actually go up and approach him in real life, he will leather seven shades of shit at you. He's got the guy in the deck and he's pitting a bit. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but I find it very funny, and he's my kind of guy. So, sponsored by Mike Amesbury. My name's Alec Anderson. Not Alec Anderson, that's a Swedish Scandinavian. That's my name. That's my nom de plume when I'm doing those thrillers, in the Scandinavian thrillers about a detective who's got a bit of a drinking problem and likes a lot of kind of cakes from McGeezer, and he's struggling behind the scenes, but he's just an absolutely sensational detective in the dark streets of Malmo. My name's Alec Anderson, though, and I heard he had a good song. I heard he had a good style. And so I came to see him to listen for a while. And there he was, this young boy, a stranger to my eyes, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life with his words, killing me softly. I'm not going to, R.I.P. Roberta Flack. It's far too soon for me to be insulting her amazing legacy by attempting to impersonate somebody singing one of her songs, but fantastic. And of course, you're thinking about Fugees, but you should also think about A Boy, the film about it's a Nick Hornby novel, and there's the film with Hugh Grant as the kind of Nick Hornby character, basically. And he gets involved as a young boy. He's kind of ends up looking after and kind of befriending and whatever. And the young boy comes to depend on him because his mum's got a few kind of psychological problems, a few emotional problems, and he wants to go and do. He's a bit of a hippie, basically, the young boy, before his time, and he's at secondary school. He just moved to a new secondary school, and he thinks he's going to go and do a performance. He's going to go into it's a talent show at the school, or I think it may be a Christmas show, and kids are doing things individually. He's going to go up and just sing that a cappella, Killing Me Softly, Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly. He's going to sing that a cappella in front of the whole school, and the Hugh Grant character's trying to say, they're going to destroy you. They're going to rip you to pieces, and it is that thing of being utterly terrified for somebody that you care for. And that's much worse than being terrified for yourself. And I've got to admit, I'm feeling a bit like that about. I knew Barry Ferguson. I knew him as a young boy. I didn't know him personally, but I saw him playing as a young boy. I saw him doing so many things for Rangers, and that intense relationship has lasted throughout my entire life. About a boy, Barry, the boy, the number one boy. He is back. You just care, don't you? Rangers have gone from thinking that a manager who managed Genk and won the Belgian League, with Genk, who won the Belgian League a couple of times as Club Bruges manager, who had a serious go at it as Monaco manager in Ligue 1. He wasn't a really good fit, so what we need is a guy who had managed Celtic Hearts, Blackpool, Clyde and Alloa. He will definitely be the man to look after us until the end. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that at all. That's unfair. That's cruel. But I think that is a lot of the reaction to this appointment today of Barry Ferguson coming in to be our caretaker manager, our interim manager, following the departure of following the sacking of Philip Clement yesterday, Sunday. He's bringing along Allan McGregor, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds. Yeah, that's. I mean, Neil McCann, I was saying last night, was a possible candidate to be Rangers interim manager, because I'm like everybody else. I see Neil McCann on the telly, on Sports Scene, being really fantastic in his tactical analysis, and I know he's a dude as well. He's got a particularly strong, if not actually aggressive character. He has had experience. He managed Dundee for a season. I think was it Dunfermline as a kind of assistant to Jim Jeffries from Dunfermline going through financial problems. I don't know if did he have maybe a very slight spell where he was kind of in sole charge of Dunfermline's kind of caretaker manager there, and then he ends up being caretaker manager of Dundee, helped them avoid relegation, I think, from the top flight, and I think they went for somebody else. I think they interviewed somebody else to take the job on full time, but they couldn't get him, and so Neil McCann comes back and he had them for a whole season, kept them in the top flight again. I think they were bottom of the league this season after that, and by about October he got the sack there, Neil McCann. But he knows his way around the bibs and the cones, does Neil? And my God, does he know success? I think he's won about 28 Scottish Cups, about 14 different teams. He certainly played in the Scottish Cup final for Rangers, Falkirk and Hearts. I might be missing somebody out. I think he won about 5 Scottish Cups with us. We definitely won it with Hearts against us in '98, and I think he played in that, was it 2015 final, when Falkirk lost to Inverness Cali in the Scottish Cup final. He scored against Germany, but he's playing for Scotland. Got 20 odd caps for Scotland, I think, Neil McCann. And I used to sit and watch Neil McCann when my season ticket, pre-2012, season ticket for a decade, up the back of the Govan towards the Copeland end, and I would just watch him and Ronald de Boer and Arthur Newman and Jorg Alberts pitting on exhibitions, just pitting on entire exhibitions. Phenomenal football player, Neil McCann, and with a bit of coaching experience. Billy Dodds, and I don't know if Barry has said to Neil McCann and Neil's said to bring along Billy Dodds or whatever, because Billy Dodds only, I think he had 3 years at Rangers altogether, just about 3 years, and brought in by Dick Advocat towards the end of Billy Dodds' career. Well, he's hitting about 30, I think, anyway, when he joined Rangers right at the end of 1999. He'd been a great striker with St Johnstone, Aberdeen, Dundee United, and he came to Rangers and just fitted in the team. He knew Cumnock. He fitted in like a guy who just loved Rangers, had supported Rangers his whole life, Billy Dodds, and he was just bloody great, scoring against Celtic at Parkhead and all that, and scoring again. I remember him scoring twice against Belgium at Hampden. I was there when he did that as well. He was playing for his country. Scored in the Scottish Cup final and stuff like that. Billy Dodds just a great player. He's had coaching experience. I think him and Neil McCann took over as interim kind of management team at Inverness Cali Thistle when John Robertson had, a personal issue. He had to step aside as manager at Inverness Cali Thistle, and they took over. And I think Neil McCann wasn't interested in taking it any further. But Billy Dodds stayed on and took them to the Scottish Cup final. He led them in the Scottish Cup final against Celtic, and I think he got them promoted as well, back to the top flight, was it? But they got relegated again. And anyway, that was him. But he'd been coaching at like Queen of the South and I think Ayr possibly as well. There's a few minor kind of coaching roles, Billy Dodds. So again, coaching experience. I don't know what Al McGregor's been up to. Forgive me. I don't know what he's up to, and who cares? Griggs is just the greatest goalkeeper I've ever seen in my life, playing for Rangers. Just across his two spells, he is the Rangers' all-time great goalkeeper. He left us 2 seasons ago, and that's him back. Now this means the sacking of obviously Philip Clement sacked, but Stefan van der Heyden, his assistant, his mate, I would imagine Stefan van der Heyden, fellow Belgian, he's off skate as well, as is Alec Ray and Colin Stewart. Colin Stewart, a sore one, I think, been around the club for a while, knows the club really well, goalkeeping coach. That felt a bit cruel, maybe, if you're looking at just this appointment of the 4 people this management team were brought in, this temporary management team looks like it's all Rangers people. That's the main thing here. They know the club inside out. So Colin Stewart knows the club inside out, but is he, guilty by association, part of the clear out of the old regime that Patrick Stewart wants to oversee? And it has to be said, if his goalkeeping coach, Colin Stewart's, Jack Butland's game has been falling to pieces this season. So I don't know if that's... Get Al McGregor in there anyway. Best coach possible, I would imagine, for Jack Butland, but also Al McGregor's that way about him. I mean, he's dour as anything, but obviously he's a character, but he's a funny guy, and he's Rangers crazy, and he gets it. He totally gets it, and he will impart that Rangers feeling in that dressing room. Alec Ray, again, if you're looking at just getting in guys who know what it's like to win stuff with Rangers, know what Rangers are all about, Alec Ray has won the league title as a Rangers player alongside Barry Ferguson back in 2004-2005, but no, maybe he's been tainted by association with the Philip Clement reign, so he has gone as well. I don't know, it seems, in one respect, it seems like kind of thick as mince, utterly stupid planning. It's the worst kind of playing to the gallery sort of appointment, but it gets a bit better when you see the rest of the management team. And you think of the rest of the coaching team, and you think perhaps it's maybe the kind of Barry Ferguson's going to go in there as a kind of Steven Gerrard. I know Steven Gerrard's a bit slicker or what have you, and played at a slightly higher level than Barry, but he was a better player, Steven Gerrard, but Barry could live with anybody in the park. But you go into the dressing room and command the respect of the players, and no player is going to intimidate him. He's the kind of figurehead, if you like, and then we'll have the actual tactical nous coming probably from Neil McCann, and the coaching from Billy Dodds, and just the general henchman demeanour coming for Griggs. That's maybe makes a bit more sense in that respect, that the world of punditry and Podding's loss is the new Rangers management team. Barry is a club ambassador up until recently. He's done his little kind of 7-minute video for Rangers TV tonight. I'm sorry, that's why I've come on so late there. He's happy to be out of coaching. He was happy to be out of coaching. You know what I mean? He's got a column for the Daily Record. I don't read the Daily Record. I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm not boycotted it around. I just don't see the Daily Record. But I know Barry did a column for him at one point. I don't know if he still does that. I know he's on the PLZ pods, which I avoid like to play. I can't really go. There's wee bits that are quite funny in that, but I'm not really bothered about watching that kind of stuff. But I know he's on that quite regularly. So it seems he's been well away from coaching of any kind. So I don't know. It shows that not only could we afford to sack Clement, despite hysterical reports to the contrary, we totally could afford to sack him, but we can also afford to sack and replace half of our coaching infrastructure. Do we even need US money? Do we need that American pie? Or is this just yet another sign that the takeover is guaranteed to happen, that we can actually afford to splash the dosh? It's not dollar bills. To just, you guys are all paid off, and I'm going to not just take one caretaker manager in to take over temporary. I'm going to bring in the whole lot of you. Bring in your whole team. Bring in along as many as you want, Barry. No, I think it also maybe intimates that the management teams that you would want are working for other clubs just now. I don't know what I don't know what these guys are up to with other clubs, if they are at all. I don't know what Al McGregor's up to before he's come back to Rangers today. But I think Neil McCann, I mean, he's on Sky and the BBC, so he's obviously kind of freelancing. So he'll not have to get bought out of contract, and I wouldn't imagine to get him from the gantry down onto the training field again. And I don't know what Billy Dodds is up to, but it's not anything that's, you're thinking, oh my God, how are Rangers going to get him? I think these guys are comparatively available, even though Barry was talking tonight about having to get in touch with them and see if they could come out of their current jobs. It seems to me it's probably a comparatively cheap option. I don't know if Patrick Stewart, is he a genius? Is he a quick operator? Is he one of these guys? No, he's from Aberdeen. And he's maybe one of the folks being brought up with a certain kind of Aberdonian who thinks all Rangers fans just, I can just give him a bit of Barry and a bit of Neil McCann, and that's them. They'll be sash bashing their way to Ibrox and more numbers than ever before. They'll love all that kind of stuff. The Egypt stood in Glasgow. I don't know. There is no sporting director yet. We don't have this sporting director. Patrick Stewart, the CEO, was talking on Wednesday, just Wednesday past there, about how he needs to get a sporting director in. There's no easy fixes and blah blah blah. So that hangs heavy over this whole series of appointments. To which the weirdest bit, the bit for me that I can try and make it make sense. I can see where we're coming from in some respects, and others I can't. The bit for me, what's the opposite of a Rosetta Stone? The opposite of something, not the thing that brings it all together, but the thing around which any theory keeps collapsing. And the bit of evidence that keeps ruining any chance of working out what's going on is Issame Charai. Issame Charai, who we brought in just a few weeks ago, I think his first game on the bench as an assistant for Clement was the Union Saint-Gilloise game, which is the last game we played in the Europa League group stage just a few weeks ago there. And he came in as a replacement for Andries Uldering, who had to go back to the Netherlands for personal reasons. So I think that I didn't pay much attention to why we brought in Issame Charai, but people were saying he's actually got quite a good CV as an assistant manager. Maybe he's been brought in by Niels Koppen to replace Clement if Clement has got to go, because Clement's coat's been a shaky peg of varying degrees of shakiness all through this season. So I don't know. It seems I think when we scored the first goal against USG that night, which came from a corner kick routine, something that there was no evidence of before Charai arrived, Clement turns round, the camera goes to Clement, and he turns round and goes to the bench, and you can't help thinking that was, that's Issame Charai has brought that move with him. That's the first thing he's put towards his coach. Strasbourg just recently, he was coach at St Troiden, at Leuven, coach of the Morocco under-23s. He's got a really good CV. The thing for me is he's born in Antwerp, so I assumed he was going to be a mate of Clement. So I don't get why he hasn't left with Clement. I know he's brought in a 3.5-year contract or something, so that maybe it's too expensive to pay him off. But we've brought in all these other guys and we've paid off all these other guys. That doesn't really make sense. And also, Koppen's making appointments, kind of that have got nothing to do with Clement while Clement's still there. That doesn't really make sense either. And Charai took the training this morning before the appointment of Barry and his team was announced. Why can't he just keep taking? He seems overqualified and underqualified. He seems too overqualified, and he's been taken on as part of Barry Ferguson's team. But it seemed weird to appoint him when Clement was still here, and then he doesn't leave with Philippe Clement as I expected him to, because I thought it comes from the same. He's a Moroccan international, but he's a Moroccan national, but he's born in Antwerp, born in Belgium, in the same city as Philippe Clement. So I can't quite work out if it's a total clear out. If we're going to Colin Stewart and Alec Ray, why are we not getting rid of Issame Charai? He's only been there for a few weeks, so he kind of get blamed for anything that went wrong. It just seems quite. He's kind of caught between. I think he might be caught between three different kind of signing policies. The one we had when Clement was here at the beginning of the season, and he was having to do far too much. So maybe he's named this guy at that point. I've got a mate, and Issame Charai. He's been a coach with a couple of Belgian teams, and he's really good, and blah blah blah. Maybe, earmark him if this problem with Andries Uldering persists. He's perhaps Patrick Stewart thinking about the Americans coming in, and Charai is a guy that we want to keep, because he's so good that it might be useful to them. And also, maybe it's Niels Coppin. Niels Coppin has just gone, we might be sacking Clement. I'm going to have to get somebody in who's going to be ready to take the club on. And yet he isn't. He hasn't been given the caretaker manager's job. It just seems quite strange. Patrick Stewart, but this appointment, there's different ways of looking at it. His statement was quite good. He was talking about how the reaction to the Queen's Park defeat was concerning. It just wasn't happening, and that's basically how I feel as well. We couldn't. I didn't think it was time to sack Clement straight after the Queen's Park defeat. I wouldn't have had much argument with it, but it was like this. It could have been just a nadir before you bounce back, and it's one of those moments where there's so much getting done at the club, so much needing to be done at the club. There's so much being rebuilt, restructured that could be the moment you just go, yeah, that was a one-off. But just we learned a valuable lesson that day, and we bounced back from that, and it's all fantastic football from there on after. But there was a poor reaction at Tynecastle, but we got the win, and then on Saturday it was just that was it. It was over. So I think I agree with him that, and then he goes on to say, Patrick Stewart, I agree with Patrick, the CEO, when he cited that, the way he cited it in today's statement. But he said, these issues we are facing run deeper than the manager, says Stewart. The ongoing football review seeks to address those issues, and we will continue to implement its findings in the coming weeks and months ahead of appointing a new permanent long-term manager. And there's 3 or 4 things from this. Number one, it confirms this is a short-term fix, the appointment of Barry Ferguson. This is a statement that's coming out when he's announcing that Barry Ferguson and his team are taking over. At a point, it confirms that this is a short-term fix. So it's they're going to find a permanent long-term manager. Number 2, it confirms it will nevertheless take months to find a new manager. And perhaps that's just buying into it. It's good. We want the due diligence to be done. I don't like to Rangers do these things hastily. Don't think anybody in the Rangers supporters is interested in getting a new full-time manager just now before the end of the season. We don't want to repeat the pattern of the past 3 seasons. But it might also be Patrick Stewart buying himself some time for the takeover to happen. If this US takeover is continually being mooted, seems a goer. If that's going to happen, he maybe wants to get that money in, get that takeover completed, so we know exactly. Maybe that's going to be a big effect on the sporting director that's appointed as well, and they want the sporting director in to make that appointment of a manager. As well as, obviously, you want him to be there when that appointment's made, even though Niels Coppin is head of recruitment as well. So he's perhaps buying himself some time with that. 3, I think it makes it sound very organic and holistic. This isn't a sacking. This is not a kind of horrible, clanging sacking. It's the implementation of a recommendation by consultants and as part of an ongoing internal review of our operation and infrastructure here at Ibrox and Auchenhowie. It's part of a process. It's not a sacking. It's no headlines. It's no tabloid stuff. It's just it's just all part of a wee process. And number 4, it kind of lets Barry off the hook. Any problems that he encounters in his short spell as caretaker manager, they aren't just his. It's the club. The whole club is needing totally reviewed. Bobby Farrell, or Farrell, I don't know how you pronounce it. The guy in Boney M, the guy in Boney M, we did all the dancing. He's a fantastic dancer, Boney M. Rasputin. He died in St. Petersburg. He died at 60 years old in St. Petersburg, which is where Rasputin died. It's quite unbelievable. And I've seen St. Petersburg on the pitch at the City of Manchester Stadium, Zenit St. Petersburg, playing us in the 2008 UEFA Cup final. Yeah, it's the first European final the club had reached in 36 years. It put us back in the map. Whatever Barry Ferguson may have done latterly, he led us. He led us down to that Manchester tunnel, past a European trophy, and onto the pitch for the single most important match of my life as a Blue Nose. It's the centrepiece of my Rangers supporting life, and that shit never dies. It's a bit like Rasputin. It's really hard to get rid of that. The problems with Barry maybe continued when he was Scotland captain, and we had that little issue with him. Scotland captain, he felt like he was going to embarrass himself on the bench. That game against Iceland, another game I was at, him and Allan McGregor, stripped of the captaincy of Scotland, told they're not going to play for Scotland again. And then Walter Smith, who is the ultimate Ranger in terms of knowing what our club's about, knowing how our club operates, the standards of our club, he dropped Barry as well. He dropped him, and it was just. And he sold him at the end of the season. Walter having been Scotland manager as well, but I think it was more just the way he was representing the club with that kind of behaviour there. And we had the whole thing, I say, we were falling out with Le Guin, which Barry maintains there was no fallout on his part. The manager just thought he was undermining him because he was too strong a personality in the dressing room. But it's always Dundee United. I'm talking about investing in Barry Smith as a person, feeling this kind of intense relationship with him. I was at the game where he took on the captaincy. Now, he's been in that dressing room as a young boy in 1998 onwards when Lorenzo Amoruso's in there. It's big kind of massive physically and personality-wise, loud Italian, dominant captain, and as things started to go wrong under Dick Advocaat, it was Barry. He got given the captain's armband. I think even Dick Advocaat could see we need a proper Rangers man here, And Lorenzo, I was at that game against Dundee United, and Amoruso chose to wear boots with a lot of green on them that night, and also he was following Barry Ferguson all over the park, shouting at him, berating him, going for him, trying to undermine his captaincy during this game against the. Barry didn't care, and he scored. I think Kenny Miller scored his first goal at Ibrox that night, but Barry Ferguson stole the show by then, not only wearing the captain's armband as a lifelong Blue Nose, his brother having played for the club as well, but he goes and scores a second goal. We beat United with a terrible record at home, I think, that season at that point. And he scores a goal that confirms the win, but it was an absolute belter of a goal as well, and he's just soaking up the crowd. He just arrived as Rangers captain. His first game as Rangers captain, he scores against Dundee United. And then there was that 2nd of February 2005, he comes on versus Dundee United at Hampden, that League Cup semi-final. It shamed me in my regard for my own club. He couldn't wait to come back for Blackburn, couldn't wait to come back and play for Rangers. Fernando Rickson was captain that season and he would stay captain, but I didn't mind. Barry was on the bench that night, he didn't mind. We were 3-1 up against United in the second half. Barry comes on and the game finished 7-1 to Rangers. He didn't think he scored, but it was just the Barry Ferguson effect against Dundee United. And then you get that game on the 13th of January 2007 where Walter's back as manager. Allegedly had Walter had to split up a fight between him and the chairman before the game, but he scored the last goal in a 5-0 win that day against United. And 24th of May 2009, after Walter had dropped him, he comes on for Kenny Miller, like 72 minutes. We'd beat 3-0 up against Dundee United. The game was done. We had to win the game to win the title, and the game was well and truly. We put a fantastic performance that day, and Walter brought on Barry just to show him the respect, I think, to say, you're on your way, but you have been captain, you're a great Ranger, come on, you can get your share in the title. The title, and Barry then lifts the trophy with David Weir, who'd replaced him as captain when Barry got dropped by Walter. So that was a lovely moment. And the following week, he's no captain, but he has to play the whole game against Falkirk in the Scottish Cup final because I think it's Pedro Mendes was injured and Morissette was injured. So no, Walter wanted to drop him for the Scottish. Maybe just had to bring him back in for that game against United to get him warmed up again, more than anything else, more than an act of respect. But he played those two games, then we sold him to Birmingham. But he went and won a League Cup final against Arsenal at Wembley while playing with a broken rib. Barry, he's just a phenomenal player. He ends up player manager at Blackpool. He goes to Blackpool, we're there in the Premier League, holds his own, absolutely no problem down there, but Blackpool went through serious financial problems as well, and he ends up becoming their kind of player manager for a wee while and a caretaker manager there. I think he saved them for relegation down another flight or something, but he's had quite the career. He ended up I'm always going on about 2012. I'm always going on about how the fact we're still recovering as a club from 2012, from our time in the lower leagues, and our time in the lower leagues started with a game I didn't want to be at, but I ended up there anyway. The game against Brecon City in the Challenge Cup at Glebe Park in Brecon City. We're a third-tier club, and we were a fourth-tier club. We were the underdogs. So that was the hedge, the beautiful Brecon hedge. It became a symbol of hell, basically a thorn bush of trauma. Well, as Kelty Hearts manager, Barry relegated the hedge right out of league football. He won his Scottish and League Cup finals versus Celtic. He won his league titles. We'll get lots of repeats of that 2002 Scottish Cup final goal in the telly. His goal into Brimley, that 5-1. He led us down the tunnel and he captained us in a European final. Basically, he's everything Clement wasn't, from the baldy Belgian to the Hamilton Hairy. I'd rather have had Stephen Naismith as manager. He's only as much a manager as Neil McCann, I suppose. We do have Neil McCann, but neither of them can quite, I think, provide the kind of Gerrard effect. And I know Barry Ferguson, is sharp, I would imagine, intellectually or whatever, as Steven Gerrard's, but as a football man, he does know his stuff. I think they probably need Barry as the figurehead. I don't think this is a management team. I think this is a kind of re-education team. This is a dressing room. This dressing room is going to get rinsed and told it's not a proper Rangers dressing room. And I wonder how James Tavernier is going to feel about that. I mean, like, for example, the idea that Scotty Arfield would ever have let a Rangers dressing room not try. Scott Arfield, you see what he's doing in life in general, and back at Falkirk, and just being a leader everywhere he goes. A total bubbly personality, but a total heart. I mean, this is the guy who did the Bruni during an Old Firm win, our first win over Celtic for a few years, and he knew the idea that Scott Arfield wasn't going to go about the Rangers dressing room telling everybody what Rangers were all about. I think it gets a bit overplayed, the idea that this Rangers team doesn't know anything about what it is to be a proper Rangers side. But the veracity of that will now certainly be tested. Rangers are just too clever for our own good. Barry, I'm not trying to be horrible here, that's not a pun, but him and Neil McCann and Griggs, that will certainly get them grounded. They'll certainly get them sorted out. His first game's in charge. He's got Kilmarnock away on Wednesday nights. That's Derek McInnes, the guy Barry kept out the Rangers first team as a player, and the only guy quoted more often than Barry as the solution to all our problems over the last few years, constantly. But Derek McInnes got offered the job and knocked it back. So good luck to Barry and the plastic at Kelly there. His game after that is Motherwell at Ibrox on Saturday. That'll be a very different atmosphere to last Saturday. That's his local derby, obviously. A good Hamilton boy, Barry. So he's a good Hamilton boy. He's playing against Motherwell, but he'll be as psyched as the Union Bears will be loving getting to sing the Barry Ferguson. And after that, it is Jose Mourinho. He's playing Jose Mourinho in the Europa League, and we've got a dressing room now where the manager has captained Rangers to the Europa League final, and our captain has captained Rangers to the Europa League / UEFA Cup final. We've also got Cyril Dessers, who played for Feyenoord in the Conference League final. So I mean, okay, Jose Mourinho's managed clubs to a few things in Europe, but he's never played at that level. He's not a player, so they've got that. I think Jose's just shot himself. Baza, the Uddingston Gaza, is back in the home dressing room at Ibrox. There is a portrait of the king in there, but a living portrait of another kind of king. Barry Ferguson, MBE, will be strolling into that dressing room on Saturday after his sojourn to Kilmarnock. I don't really know what else to say, folks. It's a bit of a stunner. It really is a bit of a stunner. I think I found it I wasn't expecting it, and it was 13:38, Sky Sports News. I was sitting and watching Sky Sports News, 13:38, Luke Shanley and the big ticker tape. The main thing for me today was finding out that Anna Nordqvist was indeed the Europe captain for the Solheim Cup, but they interrupted that with the news that Barry Ferguson was going to be, and I saw Derek Clark of the Rangers Review doing one of those little short videos that I try and do something. I try and put them out in this because you can do anything like on YouTube. Anybody can get a video out on YouTube, but Derek Clark, an actual journalist, had put out that Barry Ferguson was the leading candidate, the rumour number one to become the next, become the Rangers caretaker manager. And I thought, that can't be right. And then before I kind of digested that, Luke Shanley come on and totally confirmed it was, in fact, going to be the case. So I thought BBC, as usual, BBC Scotland being utterly horrible tonight in the way they edited together the Vox Pops were doing outside Ibrox. So it's like, folk giving them their time and stopping and to talk to whatever journalist it was that was sticking the microphone in their face and asking them what they thought about Barry Ferguson. And they had one guy saying, it's just the usual thing, and it's the old cliche of you need proper Rangers men to manage the club. And then they followed that immediately. They cut that immediately with a guy coming after a fella just out his work. He actually had a high vis and I think the helmet on as well. And he's like, well, we need good Rangers men. And they just, that was cruel. That was out of order. Football's not that complicated. There only is so many attitudes, so many kind of views you can really have in these things. So I thought that was out of order, but I'm worried for Barry. That's what it is. I'm worried for Barry more than I'm worried for myself. It moves on quick. When it starts moving, it really starts moving. I was a bit worried I didn't really do Clement enough of a service last night in my reaction pod to his sacking, that I should maybe have spent more time analysing his pluses and minuses, but well, that's all we've been doing for the last 16 months. It's done. He's gone. And it was the right decision made at the right time. Philip Clement is over. Kevin Thompson, I thought Kevin Thompson being at the club just now would have a chance of getting in there. Maybe two Kelty Hearts managers, two ex-Kelty Hearts managers kind of in the same room at the same time. I don't know, but that seemed a weird one that he didn't get to step up. We've already got him in a retainer, if you like. But I don't know. I don't know what's happened there at all. I was kind of hoping Clement could hold on and be effectively a caretaker till we got that sporting director in. But I was hoping Clement could turn it around and prove he was actually a great manager and take us forward. It was just the infrastructure of the club, the infrastructural problems that were holding us back. But no, it clearly wasn't the case. And I think Patrick Stewart, our CEO, was clearly hoping that Clement would be able to hold on as well. But it became apparent. But it became beyond any doubt that it was starting to get toxic. It was starting to go backwards under Clement, and I think that moment was only arrived at completely, undeniably, on Saturday against St Mirren with it was a total non-performance. The team literally didn't turn up. I think so. But now, like Gavin and Stacey, Christmas special, we are again a few years down the line. We all find ourselves all dragged back to Barry. It might be cheap, but it is cheerful. It might not be sophisticated, but it totally gets us because we're not that sophisticated either. It'll keep us ticking over till we confirm the details of that big lush holiday in San Francisco. No more 4-2-3-1. That's going to be fun. At least we're sick of the 4-2-3-1, aren't we? And Barry tonight. He's interviewing Rangers TV saying, "You will see certain differences come Wednesday night. You will see certain differences come Wednesday night. Aggressive in the press, attack minded." This is a quote from. These are the quotes from Barry. That's what he's promising us. He speaks well, and I just suddenly realised when I'm watching him tonight, as I wiped the tears away, because that's the one thing you can be cerebral as you like about it, and it's logical probably to think that Barry Ferguson hasn't shown the kind of levels of managerial nous that should get him the caretaker job at Rangers. But when you see Barry Ferguson, who is like family, and he's in there and he's talking about Rangers, it's fuck it. Just get him in. I can't deny the utter thrill of seeing Barry there. And he's not a 20-year-old boy anymore, Alec. He's like 47. In fact, he's just turned 47. And he talks like somebody who's been through stuff. I worry that Patrick Stewart has just seen, it's like he said, all right, Barry's about the place as ambassador and that. He's talking to him quite often. You saw some library footage tonight of James Bisgrove trying to kind of sook in with Barry Ferguson at some other event, some other launch. Barry's there as an ambassador. And after having the way his playing career ended at Rangers, it's lovely to see him back as an ambassador because we all get hot-headed, we all do and say stupid things. I've done enough of that in this pod alone. And he would have regrets. I've never read a Barry Ferguson autobiography or anything like that. I've not been reading his columns, so maybe he's discussed all this stuff in public. And you guys all know the inside scoop or whatever. But to me, it's nice to see him back at Ibrox because he would regret that like anything. I felt bad for him when it ended the way it did in his playing career at Ibrox, but he's been back playing for the veterans, and it's I just worry though that Patrick Stewart has just said, all right, you're there. You seem quite good. You seem like a total Rangers man. Do you want the job? Do you want to take over? It's like there's a painter and decorator just lives in the same street as you, and you get him in to do your living room just because you can't be bothered getting quotes and that. It turns into a night. I don't know, but I wish Barry all the best. Look, folks, this is. I'm never going to do that again. I really apologise for putting up a post today. I don't know if you all have seen it, and I'm sorry for bothering you so often on your phones via the YouTube. People have been lovely enough to subscribe or whatever. I sent out a thing just saying that Barry's the manager because I just want to let you know in case for some reason you're not connected to the internet or something. In case you live in the 19th century, I thought it was my duty to let you know that Barry Ferguson was just been confirmed as our caretaker manager, and I just said in my excitement, I'll get a pod out later on about that, because I knew I was going to have to do a pod about it. But that might have given the impression, that's a bit Rangers review. That was a bit, right, guys, we'll have a routine, it'll be there by tea time, it'll be there, but I shouldn't do that. I'm making promises that I can't keep. I'll always have a pod out, a preview pod for a game, a reaction pod to a game, and generally any big news, I will chuck a pod out there because I can't help myself. I need to get it off my chest. But it's going to be midnight. It's probably going to be Tuesday morning by the time this gets uploaded. So I apologise for that, folks. I'm a totally unreliable git. The other thing that's happening, and it's probably happening again. I've been trying hard today to sort out my problems with my recording equipment. Trying to get all the photographs and that, my holidays that I've got on this phone. Try to get it up because it's doing that thing where at the end, if it's a long video, it starts running about the middle of the video. If I go over an hour, it starts getting out of sync. My mouth starts getting out of sync. So can I just ask you briefly, the audio and the video don't match up as the longer the video goes on. I don't know if I've managed. I deleted a whole lot of stuff off my phone today, and I tried a few technical. I'm not the most technically adept, but I tried things to resolve that. So can I just ask you if you could just watch me just now. I know a lot of you are just I would advise most you just listen to me. It's no pretty to look at the best of times, never mind. It gets annoying if it's out of sync. But could just for a second or two, I'm going to stop speaking, and then I'll say, right, that's me stop speaking now, and then you can look at me and see if my mouth's still going, and that'll mean there's still a problem. So when I say I'm going to stop, just look at me. I'm going to stop speaking now. Thanks very much for that, folks. I'll be back for it with a very, very brief preview of the Kilmarnock game. We'll get the tactics and that Barry's putting forward. We'll get some more pressers from him, and I'll give you a wee bit of reaction to that. But he was asked on Rangers TV tonight, Barry, what would you be saying to the players when your first time in the dressing room with the Rangers players, the current squad? What would you be saying to them? And he said, I'll be telling them you're playing with Glasgow Rangers. Enjoy it. It's a privilege. Talk to you soon, troops.